outside of 2020, no American League Central team has repeated as division champs since 2017 and 2018. That was your Cleveland Indians. They've done that a little bit more recently than they've won a World Series, 76 years to be exact. What has to happen for the Guardians to repeat as division champs? What has to happen for them to break that 76-year curse?
Tanner Bibee of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into this episode of Locked On Guardians. It's our favorite half hour of the day. We hope it's your favorite half hour of the day, covering your Cleveland Guardians as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Justin Latta. On today's Locked On Guardians, we're going to talk about what has to happen for the Guardians to repeat as American League Central Division champs. The Guardians were the last team to do it outside of the Twins in 2020 and 2019. We're just going to throw 2020 in the trash where it belongs. I think we can all agree with that. We'll talk about what has to happen for the Guardians. Is there a world where they win the World Series, as Jeff likes to say? We'll talk about all those scenarios on today's Locked On Guardians. Before we get going to that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So visit FanDuel to check that out. I'm Justin Ladd. As I said, I was formerly the editor-in-chief of Guardians Baseball Insider, currently a contributor to the News Herald, the Morning Journal, with Guardians and Guardians prospect coverage. Prospects Live next year in Cleveland.substack.com, where you can go and download my 90-page Guardians prospect ebook. It's out there. Go check it out. And Jeff is muted, so he doesn't want to talk today. That's a good start to that episode.
Sorry, I was avoiding coughing on mic, as is my favorite thing to do in the winter. When I am not busy coughing, I used to be a lead prospect analyst nationally at Scout 24/7 before being on this podcast for 1,400 plus episodes.
Yep, Jeff's been here for 1,400. I don't know how many I've been here for, but I've enjoyed it. And as I said, it's the best half hour of the day. We get to talk Cleveland Guardians. We're glad you're here with us, and we're glad you made Locked On Guardians your first listen. We are free wherever you get podcasts, so make sure you subscribe, download, all that good stuff, and become an insider. Where you can see on the screen, become an insider. You could become an insider and learn information like who is going to start the Guardians spring breakout game. Our insiders got that information first, thanks to a good pal of ours over at the Salvius Godcast, I will say. But that's how you get that information first. It's time to be an insider and all those good things. Jeff, before we get into some pathways for the Guardians to win the American League Central and somehow win the World Series, which we'll talk about, let's get into some spring training notes. Let's go over some things. One thing I want to note is I listened to the broadcast the other day. So Tom Hamilton said that it sounds like Jose Ramirez is going to hit second in this lineup. I'm glad to hear that. I'm a little bit nervous because he just hasn't done it very well when they've asked him to. I think the whole idea of where you bat not being well is overrated. Like, I think that just is fluky. But some guys generally don't feel comfortable doing it. So I'm very curious. Like, I'm excited to hear that, but I'm also nervous to see how it plays out. But it makes a ton of sense. So I'm very glad to hear that they're going to experiment with Jose in the 2 spot. I think that just makes all the sense in the world for this team.
If we, people accuse me of doing, simulations, why do we bother even having him play? But I'll say this, like, on paper, it makes perfect sense. But the problem, where the problem could arise, just comes from comfort. Like I always say, like, that's the stuff you can't talk about. You can't quantify. The same reason he chose to stay in Cleveland is comfort, right? Like, this is a player, maybe more than anyone else, who places a huge value on comfort. He might be fine. It might be great. And if it's great, all the better, because that's where you want your best hitter to hit. But I am curious to see how it goes. And I'll also throw out this caveat. Like, if it's like a month in and it's not going great, remember, he started really slow a year ago. So I think if you're going to commit to him in the 2-hole, you have to make sure he is fully buying in and that you've got like at least half a year of it it can't be one of those things you hop on, hop off quick because of a slow start. Like, it's got to be a full commitment.
Yeah, there are a lot of things I think about this team that I'm curious to see how fast they pull the plug on things, like the Jose hitting second. We're going to talk probably for a month or two about Carlos Santana, how he's a slow starter. And if that's not a sign of aging, that's just who he is. And second base job. Like, I'm very curious to see how fast they pull the plug on things. I don't think they will, because this is a patient team, but it is interesting to think about and see how long they stick with it. If you just want some other updates too, when it comes to medicals, if you haven't really seen anything. So Andrew Walters, we've talked about, he's had some shoulder soreness. He threw live BP on Wednesday. He has not pitched since February 24th. I think the hope is he'll progress to an actual game soon. We'll see. Vince Velasquez has been sick with an illness. It's been going around camp. So he's throwing BP on Friday. Today, we know that Sabrowski has shut down. He'll start throwing. He did start throwing again, but he had an anti-inflammatory injection. No guarantees there. The long-term guys are just kind of progressing. Beaver, Fry, Means, all that kind of stuff. And Frank Allenmon's still recovering from his hip surgery. I know he's in a weighted ball program, so he's kind of headed back in the right direction. Make sure you're tuning into the spring breakout game Friday night if you have the means to. I know Jeff loves spring training, and he's excited for this game as I am. I threw out the idea of kind of doing a quick live stream during the game. I'm not going to do it for the whole game, but if I did send that a question out to our insiders to see how much interest they have. A lot of people seem to have stuff going on because it's Friday, and I understand that. So if you are willing to come on for half hour of me just talking on YouTube during the game live, let me know. I'll talk during the game. We can just kind of have a companion conversation to that. So let me know. All right, let's get into the meat.
I'll probably be watching Moana 2. I'm solo parenting for the weekend, so it's going to be not much baseball for me as a matter of how things go. I'm not live streaming Moana 2 either. I feel like Disney would come down on our podcast if I tried that.
Probably. Is there a tugboat or a Basmanian devil in Moana 2? Like, still getting that side of things?
There's it is the South Pacific and like Polynesia. That's kind of close to Australia. Right,
all right. Yeah,
right?
You're still getting
isn't Micronesia where Polynesia is, and that's someone who's better at this stuff. Correct me below in the comments and tell me how I'm a moron, and it's fine. I'll admit this is not necessarily my strongest point.
You're asking the wrong guy for that as well. All right, we talked about the Guardians. Nobody's won a division back-to-back times outside of 2020 since 2017, 2018. Thankfully, that was your.
And they won in 16, Indians. So it was actually 3 in a row that time.
It was a three-peat. It was a three-peat. You're right. I want to talk about what has to happen for the Guardians to repeat. I'm very curious to see what you think in terms of
massive injuries for every other team. I'm kidding.
Well, I think the thing you have to remember too is the Guardians can only control what they can control. This exercise has to be devoid of all other the Tigers. I just did our AL Central roundtable with the rest of our AL Central hosts that'll be out next week, and everybody picked the Tigers to win the division because they're the hot and sexy pick because they had a great second half last year. But the teams who win the offseason don't always win the division. How many years in a row did we hear the White Sox win the offseason? And yeah, they might have won the division some of those years. They might have made the playoffs, but they didn't do really too much. The Tigers probably did have the best offseason if we're being honest, in terms of the AL Central. Gleyber Torres, I think will be really good for them, and Jack Flaherty's back, and they make a good 1-2 punch. But the best offseason doesn't always win you the division, and the American League's wide open. I think the division. I've said before, the division's wide open. I know we want to say the Guardians should have done more this offseason. One of our everydayers and insiders, David, I saw a post on one of his groups about the offseason. What would the Guardians have done offensively this offseason? They went on and added starting pitching. We'll talk about a lot of that. They went on and added starting pitching. And I think they're going to be better for it. They were interested in Gleyber Torres. They weren't going to sign Juan Soto. Let's be realistic. Offensively, what would they have done to improve the team outside of a trade? And remember the fact, too, that, who was selling this offseason? Who was selling players?
No one's selling ever.
Yeah, the biggest trade this offseason was Garrett Crochet, right? That was the biggest move of the offseason.
And then Cleveland probably had 2 of the top 5, let's be honest.
Well, if you're talking about Josh Naylor going to Arizona, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what, and Jimenez, I just don't know what trade was out there for them to make. Again, there was no Sean Murphy. There was no Matt Olson out there. They didn't necessarily need Garrett Crochet. That wasn't going to happen anyway.
Can I also interrupt you for a second? I also want to just talk about, the Pirates were excellent in the second half. Here are their BABIPs by player. Parker Meadows, 353. Spencer Torkelson, 346. Cole Keith, 341. Zach McKinstry, 333. Riley Green, 330. Kerry Carpenter, 329. Matt Verling, 323.
Yeah, they and they did it all in the bullpen too, and their
Trey
rotation is
Sweeney,
going to be
Nick
better.
Rogers were the opposite end, but like everyone else hit well above expected BABIPs, which is not to denigrate them as a team. It's just to say like you got to be careful with recency bias. You know you don't want to get into the Kareem Garcias of it, where good end of the year colors it too much. I think the Tigers are going to be great. I think they could. I honestly don't know who's going to win this division. I have no clue. But I don't think there is a favorite. I don't think there's anyone who's even close to a favorite to me.
I have to agree with you there, 100%. Shocking, we always agree.
Except for
Yeah, I mean, the
eggnog
Tigers
and
had a good
licorice.
eggnog and licorice. There was something else recently.
Will Smith movies we joke about.
We do disagree on Will Smith movies. Like the Twins have to be healthy. The Guardians didn't have a whole lot of health luck last year either, and the Royals are still pretty good. But it's a wide open division. All right. So what does have to happen from the Guardians' perspective of things on the end of their things, in terms to repeat in this division and maybe even win the World Series? We'll get into that next. We're talking about who could win the division and the World Series on FanDuel. Well, first, before that happens, March Madness is here. It is the best time of year. I'm not giving up this fight, everybody. March is the best time of year for sports. And FanDuel is giving you a chance to get on the action like never before. Why would they have such a great offer if March wasn't the best month? Right now, if you're a new customer, $200 in bonus bets could be yours if your first $5 bet wins. That is 200 extra bucks to use on buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, who's cutting down the nets, the Akron Zips. Go on and pick your favorite, see what underdogs you like, and then make it easy. FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props. Guardians, 82.5 wins is their over-under on FanDuel. I am smashing the over button. I do believe in more than 82. I said 85 a year ago. I was way off. They won more than 85. They are still third in terms of favorites to win the division. So FanDuel has a favorite, and it's not the Guardians. But you can go on there and you can make yourself a favorite to earn $200 in bonus bets. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Appreciate you guys making Locked On Guardians your first listen today. Every day, wherever you get podcasts, for free everywhere. And we'd love it if you shared it with a friend too and let them know if they want some Guardians talk. They want to get ready for baseball season. We are here 5 days a week covering the Guardians. We're here with all of you. We're glad you're here with us. Have them join the party. It's a fun community. Our fun community over at the Insiders group is also a lot of fun. Sign up for that as well. You can get access to some not breaking news, but some insider information. My 90-page ebook is in there on the Guardians prospects. Jeff has some draft stuff in there. We're doing bonus episodes. We're doing some leftover content, some subscriber-only mailbags. So all that stuff comes with being an insider. Go check it out. It's on your screen. It's in your show description. We would love to have you over there. All right, let's talk Guardians, what they have to do to repeat as division champs. Jeff, to me, I think the first thing that comes up is for the division champs. I think you have to ask, like, how much bullpen regression can they afford? Because let's be honest,
Agreed.
I think that was the
high watermark.
The biggest thing. That was not the high watermark, but that was the thing that carried them most of the year.
It carried them, but I think last year it's like that was the high watermark. You can't match it. You can't expect that season again.
No, and we looked it up. Like we talked about it on our crossover that nobody listened to. So if you haven't listened to our episode on Wednesday with Rogelio Castillo talking like Tigers and AL Central and Guardians, the last bullpen that had an ERA as low as the Guardians or lower than the Guardians last year, I think we went, what did we say, the 2012 Braves?
2014 Braves or something like that?
I think it was 2012. So I think it's been 13. I think it's been 13 years since any team in baseball had an ERA that low as a bullpen. So like, the Guardians bullpen, I think, will still be fine this year. I think it still has a chance to be really good, but it could still be good and will not be as good as it was a year ago. So I think the question is, how much regression can they afford? And to me, like, that regression has to be offset by Gavin Williams has to have a full healthy season. And I think this is not a stretch at all as far as pitching is concerned. I think for the Guardians to repeat as division champs, I'm not saying he has to win the Cy Young, not saying he has to finish like top 3, whatever. But I think for the Guardians to get to where they're going to go this year, to stave off bullpen regression and hold off the rest of the Central and repeat, I think Tanner Bibee is going to have to find his way to some Cy Young votes. And that could be 10. That could be 7. We said 7 earlier this offseason. I think for the Guardians pitching staff to go as far as they're going to go and win this division, I think Tanner Bibee's got to collect some Cy Young votes. He is super important to saving that bullpen and leading a rotation that's been to be better, but it's still got question marks.
I actually strongly disagree with you. So we have it because
you're wrong. You're just wrong.
I think Tanner is the one thing you can count on. So I think it's actually not about him at all. It's like if he is what he's been, then he's fine. It's about the other 4 spots because they didn't have 4 dudes a year ago. They had 3 of the worst starters in baseball and Ben Lively, who the metrics pointed to regression as the year went on. We saw more of it. Like they need to have 4 decent starters, and that matters more than having 1 star to get back to the postseason. So for me, I think Tanner is Tanner. I don't even think about him. I figure he's going to be fantastic. It's about those other 4 spots because this team made it to the postseason with, one could argue, the worst rotation in the American League a year ago. I think one could make a legitimate argument they had the worst rotation in the American League. You can even argue even with the White Sox, right? Like they had Crochet and we had
bottom
Tanner.
10 ERA. Bottom 10 ERA.
You can. I don't think they were the worst, but I think someone could sit down and make the argument. So I think it's not even about, for me, it's not about Tanner. It's just about getting dudes that don't look like corpses in terms of their production. And just like, I mean, it was bad. This looked like it was one of the worst rotations I've seen since, pre-Terry Francona, back when they were a team that was regularly kind of picking near and around the top 10, back when the Clint Frazier and the Frankie Lindor and the Drew Pomerantz years, when they were so bad, they were consistently up that high. It's just that's what, Mitch Talbot era. Like Mitch Talbot would have pitched for this team. Like peak Mitch Talbot would have been their number 3 starter a year ago. Like it was not good. So to me, that's what really stands out. Like I said, I think the bullpen's still going to be fantastic, but regression is almost completely inevitable because it was too fantastic. It felt like a video game cheat code a year ago. And I think offensively, they're going to be similar to a year ago. And if some of the young guys step up, it could be massively improved. Like, I mean, just think about the DH position. Who was their primary DH last year?
David Fry, technically.
Okay. Now, Fry was great. So he didn't take over till June. He was great in June, great in July, and then fell off a cliff for a while. Like they didn't have consistency at that position.
Esteban Florial made a bunch of DH spots early on.
Yeah. I mean, they had so many guys. Like if Manzardo can step up and be the guy that I think he is, like there'll be more consistency at DH. There's a chance for more consistency in center field. Like Ty Freeman came out of House of Fire and then turned into a dumpster fire, at a point. Like they have a lot of pathways to, as much as people want to sit here and talk about how the offense is worse, it's like when you look at it from where it was a year ago at this time, it's like they have so many more pathways to consistency. At the same time, is there a good chance you're going to have 2 to 3 positions being below league average? Yes. But like, I feel more comfortable about Rocchio now than I ever have. Like I feel more comfortable about, quite a few guys than I have. So I think offense needs to step up. You need some of the young guys to go. But I think that the pitching rotation is what really I think is going to either sink them or help them be good, just good enough to get by.
The reason I say Tanner Bibee needs to get Cy Young votes this year for this team to go where they want to go from a pitching standpoint is simply because of the bullpen regression. Like there is going to be regression. They could still be, like you said, there's just no way they're going to have an ERA that low again this year. I mean, you're already seeing injuries, right? Like Sam Henches is not going to pitch at all this year. He was at least pitching a little bit for them last year. Eric Sabrowski's already hurt. Andrew Walters has some issues. Franco Alaman's got issues. There's going to be hangover from Gaddis and Smith probably, and Clase maybe not so much, but like those guys aren't going to be as good as they were a year ago. So I think the starting pitching as a whole, I agree with you, has to improve. But I think Tanner Bibee has to be the leader of that staff because if you look around the division, we're talking about what they have to do to win the division. The Guardians still definitely have the worst rotation in the division. That's not the White Sox, because the Twins, for me, have the best 3 guys in the division. You have Pablo Lopez, you have Joe Ryan, who I absolutely love, and you have Bailey Ober, who I know
I like Ober, but I think I would still take the Tigers top 3.
Yeah. You have Skubal, you have Jack Flaherty's back, and Reese Olson, who you and I both like. And then the Royals still have Seth Lugo, who got Cy Young votes a year ago. Oh, by the way, they have Cole Reagans, who was fantastic last year, and he was their ace. Waka was good. So, like, the Guardians out of those 4 teams still have the worst rotation, in my opinion. So I think Tanner needs to step up and match the level. I'm not saying he has to be Tarek School. I'm not saying he has to be Cole Reagan's, but he has to step up and he has to get on their level. And I think he can, because it's got to be done to stave off bullpen regression. And it's also got to be done to buy time for like Shane Bieber to come back and be who he's going to be, hopefully. And like we're so high on Gavin Williams. I think Gavin Williams obviously is a huge crux of the season. Like what we're seeing in spring training has to carry over to the regular season,
which we saw
Gavin
a year
Williams,
ago and didn't carry over. And like that's
because he was hurt.
He was hurt. I know, so. It takes so little to throw it off.
Like I think he needs 30 starts. I think he has to make 30 starts this year. And as excited as we are about like Gavin Williams, I'm like, okay, like Luis Ortiz has also had a very slow, like he didn't have a great start against the Rockies. So like, at what point do we worry about Ortiz? So I don't know. Maybe none of that will matter. Like it's
spring.
It's hard
I'm not
to
worrying.
I know, like it's hard to sit there and be like, oh, Gavin Williams is having a great spring. That's super fun. But at the same time, like Luis Ortiz is not. So I'm excited about Gavin Williams, and I'm going to try very hard not to be nervous about.
What is the most number of starts Gavin Williams has made in a year?
Are we counting like combined between the minors and the majors, or are we talking about majors?
Yeah, combined.
I'm going to say 25.
If I am correct, he actually made 28 and 23.
Yeah, he was healthy his whole minor league seasons. He was never hurt in the minors, believe it or not. Like I don't think he ever even had like a blister in the minors. So like I don't think that was an issue last year. I do believe last year was a fluke. I do, in terms of injury. I got some offensive takes in terms of what the Guardians.
I think most of your takes are offensive.
That's true. As our listeners would tell us, yes. I do have some offensive takes on what the Guardians have to do to win the division. We'll talk about some of the lofty goals the Guardians have to accomplish if they are somehow going to break this 76-year World Series drought. That'll be coming up here on Locked On Guardians. Well, money could be one way the Guardians break their drought, but managing money, that's also important too. You want to do that. I want to do that. We all got to get better at it. I'm sure you've checked your bank account and you're like, hey, where did all my money go? We dine out, you online shop, you pay for some entertainment, you've got all the apps. It's very easy to lose track. Monarch Money comes in as your personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control over your finances. And it's not just a budgeting app. It is complete financial command center for you. You can track all your accounts, investments, all of the spending in one place. So don't just manage your money. Start building your wealth with Monarch Money. Use that, and you can find out how much you're spending on things like food delivery, how much you're going out, all those apps that you're spending on, maybe you're not using. And one of the things I think makes it even easier is the collaboration. I think we've all been in a situation where you're trying to manage money with your partner, and those can lead to a lot of very uncomfortable conversations. Monarch Money makes that a lot smoother. You can track shared personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page. No stress, no fighting. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com. You're going to get 50% off your first year with them. That's monarchmoney.com. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get half off your first year. Guardians have not won a World Series since 1948. I don't even know what that looks like. I don't know how many negative years old at that point.
Can I throw a controversial take about that?
Please do. All your takes are very controversial.
What one could say that, like, this is going to get me in so much trouble, that you could almost call it like the curse of Wahoo, because he came in 47, they win in 48, and then become basically the worst team in baseball for the next 40 years after that. So one could say that was they could have exercised a curse there.
My eyebrows are singed from that.
I know. I'm going to have so many angry comments. One could just point that out that,
All right. That is not going to get us into a flaming West Coast fire at all, I'm sure.
Controversy should mean more watches, right? I'm going to get all that angry comments and people are going to swear at me, and I'm just going to say either thank you for watching or I'm going to delete it and move on.
Thank God it's Friday. That's all I can say. All right. The offensive side of things that's not offensive. So, Jeff, who was the last Guardian/Indian? It wasn't a Guardian. It was an Indian. Who was the last Cleveland outfielder hit 20 home runs in a season? Do you know who that was?
Was it Chu?
It was Chu. It's been 15 years. The Guardians have not had a 20 home run outfielder since Shin-Soo Choo. Lane Thomas in 2023 was a 2020 guy. I think for this team to get where they want to go offensively, both in terms of the division and the World Series and the playoffs, we need 2023 Lane Thomas. That guy wants to get paid. It's his free agent year. The guy's got to have a 2020 year. I'm gonna even say that he's gonna do it. He is gonna have a 2020 season.
He's gonna go 40-40-40. I'm kidding. Wasn't that the thing? Wasn't Jose 340s a year ago? Was the thing?
Well,
I agree. I know
he
was close.
Home run or stolen base. Yeah,
that's what he was going for. I think when you look at Lane Thomas, he was not healthy to start last year. That's one of those other things too. Like he's another player. And I think we've seen with Lane Thomas, with Gavin Williams, like arguably the worst time to be unhealthy. Sorry, Chase DeLauter, is now. Like there's just something that seems to throw off seasons when you miss the ramp up, when you miss this early bit of the season. And for, Cleveland loves to buy low. If you look back even a year before that, the cost on Lane Thomas would have been 3 to 4 times what they paid, but they bought him at his lowest point of value. And then no matter what happens, like he could go over his next 500 at bats, and the trade's still a win because without him, they don't make it to the ALCS. But I think you're right. I think there's a lot of reasons to point towards him being a 2020 guy, and I don't think you're wrong. I think that's a legitimate chance. I still don't think he's ever going to reach the heights he reached during his All-Star year, but I think he has a chance to be a very good player. Right now, I have no sound coming, Justin.
He was an All-Star that year.
Yeah. No.
So if he does that again, he reaches those heights. I'm not saying he's going to be an All-Star.
I'm just saying he's not going to be quite because he had a BABIP and other data like that year. I think he's I think he can get to those numbers, but maybe didn't he? I mean, those I feel like maybe in my head I've overinflated those numbers, but there was talk of him being like a 5-tool star guy. I mean, he had almost 30 home runs that year. So
yeah, 28 home runs,
36
steals,
doubles.
110 WRC plus. If he does that this year for the Guardians, man, it's again, they're going to have a great, I don't know if he'll get that high, but I'll take 25 and 20 for sure. 100%. I think the other thing for me, I think the most important offensive play, I think you said Kyle Manzard. I agree with Kyle Manzard. I think he's got to be the middle of the order guy they need. But I think Bo Naylor, they need Bo Naylor badly to be just a league average hitter. I'm talking 100 WRC plus. I think if they're going to repeat, because the big thing for me this year is you don't have David Fry riding in like the sheriff on his horse, man. He's if they still had David Fry catching this year, if he was healthy, you could sit Bo Naylor against lefties and play David Fry behind the plate against lefties, and you could minimize the exposure of Austin Hedges offensively. But the problem this year is you're going to have to play 60 games or 50 games of Austin Hedges, and it's going to have to be a full game because there's no David Fry to help you out in terms of playing catcher. So they need Bo Naylor to be at least the league average hitter. He has to go out there and at least be a league average hitter because there's nobody else. It's him or Austin Hedges. There's no other catchers. Cody Huff is next in line, and you're not getting anything from Cody Huff that you got from David Fry a year ago. So I think Bo Naylor is maybe the most important offensive player for them this year. Or it's Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana also has to, fight Father Time one more year.
The interesting, I think there's a few interesting things with Bo Naylor. First of all, it's when you go back and look in the minors, he had the step back before he had the step forward. And then it felt like he put in a lot of work last offseason defensively. So maybe he spent less time batting. And I think my biggest concern really comes down to the fact that he can't hit lefties so far in the big leagues, even remotely well. He's at a 95 WRC plus versus righties. He's almost league average. He's almost that guy you're talking about. Against righties, against lefties is a 67. It was lower than that for both a year ago. But that's going to be really that big question because the defense is good enough that he can play there against a lefty, but he might be a guy where another, I don't want to say a platoon player because I think we saw the increase in defense. So I'm not so concerned about that, but he might be a guy who's moving pretty dramatically up and down that lineup, depending on what they face and what they do. He's kind of, I don't think we've spent a lot of time talking about his platoon splits, but they stand out. But I'm hoping we're going to see that rebound after the down year in the minors, now that he has to maybe spend less time focusing on the defense after really focusing on that.
Yeah. No, like I said, no David Fry to bail him out this year, so that's super important. The other thing too, I would say, is I want to know what happens with second base this year, because nobody so far seems to want the job at second base. Let's imagine, like, we're gonna say, like, okay, Travis Bazzana emerges as the second baseman, and to me, like, the best Guardians lineup, the best chances to win the World Series. I think the Guardians, and everybody probably agrees with this, that Chase DeLauter in right field and Travis Bazzana at second base, right? That solidifies your lineup. That's the best
Especially
case
by the end of
scenario.
the year.
Yeah, that's your best case scenario to not only make the playoffs but also win the World Series. My question though is, like, the Travis Bazzana thing is so difficult to get to. I mean, Chase DeLauter just has to be healthy, which is also difficult. But in order for them to call up Travis Bazzana, those guys at second base have to struggle, right? Like, they're not going to call up Travis Bazzana in the middle of the year if Juan Brito and Gabriel Arias and whoever are not doing well at second base. If they are, they're not going to. But we all agree that the best version of this lineup has Travis Bazzana in it. Can the Guardians, like, realistically contend for a division title and have second base struggle so badly that they have to call up Travis Bazzana? Like, can the Guardians actually be in contention and have second base be so poor that they want to churn? They can't. They could afford for second base to be, because they did it a year ago. That's what you're going to say.
They did it a year ago. I mean, they had the second.
But they were getting
at that position.
But they were getting platinum glove defense. I mean, they're not going to get that this year. They're not going to, no matter what. They're not going to get
Gabby should be an above average defender there. Like, I know you're going to.
He's not Andres.
He's not. No, I'm not saying he is. But, like, at second base, how much is really the difference between plus and plus? Like, second base is not the most physically demanding position. It's not.
Without the shift, it's harder. Without the shift,
it is. Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But there's still a reason why, like, your best players go to shortstop and not second base. And when guys shift off of shortstop, they go to third base if they have the arm, and second base if they don't. Like, it is a devalued position relative to the rest of the league. And they got literally some of the worst production in baseball offensively there. And then they got the best production defensively. And I think if Gabby struggles but is above average defender, you're taking a hit. But there's a world where he could be, a 90 WRC plus, and that's still an improvement. Now, that's not what you want, but that would lead to Bazzana maybe down the line, or maybe it's Brito up at some point. But I think that's not a sink or swim position, because really a year ago they didn't get much value there.
The other equation to that I think is complicated is, if the Guardians are not in contention by July or August, you're not going to see Travis Bazzana. Like, they're not going to give up the year of service time. They have to be in contention for him to come up. Like, there's zero chance. Maybe like the last 2 weeks of the season, if they're out of contention, because he still retains PPI at that point and a year of control. But, like, as far as, like, impact in the season, they have to be in contention for Travis Bazzana to come up. All Chase DeLauter has to do is be healthy. That's,
let's be honest,
very easy, right?
Good chance, no matter what, he's not coming up until August, so they can maintain PPI.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think that has to be September 1st. I think you have to wait till September. I don't think August it can happen. So I think it had to be September. But yeah, I just wonder how much production the Guardians can get away with at second base, still be in contention, and then still be like, okay, we still have to turn to Travis Bazzana. I think the other thing here too is, like, they got to solidify right field. But to me, I think they can get enough out of right field, even if they don't have Chase DeLauter out there. I still think that's what they needed. But I think we talked about this off air, maybe on air a little bit. I think the idea early on is John Noel is your DH against lefties. Santana plays first. You move Tyler Freeman to center field. You move Lane Thomas to right. And against lefties, you figure it out with Will Brennan and Noel and maybe even Jonathan Rodriguez. Who knows? George Valera. So I don't think necessarily Chase DeLauter has to be in this lineup for them to win the World Series. I think it would help, but they do have to solidify right field. So in terms of winning the World Series, let's just not just the playoffs, the World Series. What has to happen? The Guardians need to make a splash trade for right field, or Chase DeLauter's got to get healthy. The odds are practically the same for the World Series for that. So someone has to claim right field for the Guardians, whether that's a guy for an external trade or it's Chase DeLauter. The other thing I think, as far as the World Series is concerned, I think Shane Bieber's got to come back, and he has got to be 2019 Bieber. I'm not going to say 2020 because we're throwing 2020 in the trash where it belongs. So,
I mean, I'll take 20. Was it 20? Man, I'm struggling with years. Is it 21 or 22?
22 and made the playoffs. Yeah, he was really good.
Like,
he wasn't an all-star, but he was good.
No, I'd take 22. I was going to throw at you this one as you were talking about outfield. Are you more concerned with Noel after like him being a human fan in preseason where,
I thought we didn't care about spring training.
I know, but there is that degree of like, this is where hitters are supposed to be successful.
You can't waffle on what you care about.
The reason it's a concern is because when a player is not succeeding when they're supposed to, or when they succeed when they're not supposed to. I talked about this last offseason. Like Chase DeLauter succeeding when he probably wasn't expected to. That's a positive sign. When a guy who is in an environment for power hitting isn't able to make contact because of the same issues he showed last season with that.
Corey Kluber sucked in spring training every year, man.
I know.
I know he had a track record. So you weren't worried. I get it. Because Noel doesn't have the track record.
It's a continuation of like last year and what we saw and what we already knew. And it's just like, that has me like, I guess the question is like, and this is maybe the thing for another day, but it's like, if he just continues doing what he did at the end of last year and what he's done in spring training, where do you go? Because like, again, Jonathan Rodriguez is a lefty. That doesn't like, where is your,
he's not.
I'm sorry, he's a righty. I had it backwards.
Dyslexic moment. On the team.
He'd be on the team, I think, over in a while, but like, where do you go to? And how, like, if Chase doesn't get help, I mean, he's going to be out for a while and then he's got to ramp up. Like who's the next guy up in right field? Where is it? Brennan is no longer put. Like I can't do another year if Brennan is the full-time right field.
It's Rodriguez, or when Valera gets healthy, you turn to them. Yeah. You have to. Like I said, you put Freeman in center against lefties, and you move Thomas. Will Brennan was almost league average against. I think he was league average against righties last year, close to it. So,
I think it just goes more to your point though about like there's a lot
someone
of
has to solidify
for not
right
being
field.
Successful. So it's like they need to, go through, look at everything, and maybe keep the Angels on speed dial when they inevitably implode.
Yeah. If they're going to win the World Series, if the Guardians are going to win the World Series, I think the John Means signing ends up being a big part of that. I think similar to Matthew Boyd a year ago, I think you have to get similar production out of John Means if they're going to win the World Series. You have, like I said, Cy Young level Tanner, or at least Cy Young vote getter Tanner. Bieber has to be even 2022 good. Obviously, again, Williams. I think John Means, if this team's going to win a World Series, John Means is going to have something to say about it. I think that Paul Sewald, too. I think Paul Sewald has to be the 2023 version of himself. 3.12 ERA. That FIP was kind of high, but he was really good in the playoffs. So maybe I'll say 2022. So Paul Sewald has to basically have another career season for this team to stave off bullpen regression, and it adds another arm out there because, like, this team didn't have Scott Barlow in the playoffs a year ago. They had Andrew Walters, but he wasn't really an impactful pitcher. This year, I think if you can get that version of Paul Sewald and you go Heron, Sewald, Smith, Gaddis, Clase, you're just that much deeper than all the other guys, Junis, the Walters, hopefully Sabrowski, all those guys can make an impact. I think you need another all-star year out of Quan. I think you have to get the first half. I'm not saying he has to 400, but I think you have to get that version of him.
More consistency.
But I think on not just solidifying right field that ends up being Chase DeLauter somehow in the second half and Travis Bazzana or a trade. I hate to say it. We didn't really start off talking about Jose, but I think the key to the World Series is Jose's got to show up in the playoffs, right? I think we talked about this last offseason. Jose has had a hard time.
Yeah. He's got to avoid age regression. Like, I'm
less worried about that.
It's going to be the question every year due to his size. It's going to come up. But again,
I think you're the only one asking that question.
Based on our comments, it was not. It was last year. It was so heavy in our comments when he had that slow start. But in the postseason, at this point, it's not a fluke or a small sample. He is, I don't know if he's pressing or what's going on. But that is so many guys are so bad in the postseason, but I think I agree. But I think with that bullpen, they can have some regression and just having more guys you trust, because that was part of the problem. I felt like a year ago, they were overusing some pitchers as some guys step up, even if the top end isn't as dominant, that's still a pathway to success. And I don't even know if they can get anything out of Means. I got to be honest, but I think once you hit the postseason, your top three is really all that matters. So it's a Bieber bounce back. It's Gavin Williams really emerging, and it's Tanner being Tanner, and that's what they really need.
Yeah, I think, but Jose's got to be the guy in the playoffs. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Like, that's
he needs to be the star. He needs to be more, Juan Soto and less Aaron Judge.
absolutely. All right, we'll be back on Monday with you. We'll do Monday morning headlines. We'll talk about the weekend. I'm sure we'll wrap up the spring breakout game because there's nothing Jeff loves more than talking about spring training,
You
especially
went from the weekend to wrap up. Was that intentional? Were you trying to do the weekend to wrap? Sorry.
weekend update, my favorite segment. Yeah.
Mine as well.
Yeah, we'll talk about the spring breakout game. Again, let me know if you would like a small live stream during the game. I might jump on and just talk about it while it's happening. If you want to join in that, let me know. I'll gauge whether or not I should do that. So we'll talk about that game. We'll talk about stuff from the weekend from the Guardians, and we'll get into more position previews next week as well. So look forward to all that. In the meantime, again, subscribe, download daily. We appreciate all of that stuff. Make sure you're downloading audio. You're clicking the bell. I just uploaded another one of my prospect countdown videos on YouTube. So if you hit the bell, you'll get those videos no matter what. Sign up to be an insider and email the show at loguardianshow@gmail.com. Fantasy draft, Locked On Guardians fantasy draft or fantasy league players, March 23rd, I believe at 9:30. So we'll be doing the draft live while we're recording that night. So that'll be a lot of fun. So if you're signed up, looking forward to that. If not, we'll try to get you in next year. Jeff, until the end of the weekend.
Yep. I want to thank you all for joining us. Rating, reviewing, downloading daily. It helps. Put that comment in. Let's say our comment of the day. What is your favorite flavor of ice cream? There we go. That's something different, I think. Thank you all for joining us again. Hit that bell. Put a comment.
Not licorice.
Licorice is fantastic. I have eggnog ice cream. I'm going to go get some right now. Thank you all for joining us. And go Guardians, go.